They say fewer than 1 in 10,000 children are considered true prodigies. But what happens when the world overlooks the ones who don't fit the expected mold? What if behind a quiet little girl's shy smile lies a rhythm that could move mountains? And what if that rhythm is waiting to explode in a classroom where no one ever expected it? Before we begin today's story, please let us know where you are viewing from. Please remember to subscribe if you like this video. This is the story of one such girl, 10-year-old Aaliyah Johnson. A name that would have never hit the stage if not for one life-altering moment in her school's music room. Aaliyah wasn't your average 10-year-old. She didn't come from a family of musicians. She didn't grow up with a drum kit in the basement, or a mentor guiding her rhythm. She was the daughter of a single mother, who worked nights at a nursing home in Detroit. Her home was filled more with silence than song. Except when Aaliyah found a way to make her own. Her talent was raw, unshaped, unknown to anyone, not even her teacher, not even her classmates. But when the beat inside you is louder than the world outside you, something's bound to give. Her story started not in a concert hall or talent show, but in a public school music class where she sat quietly in the back, watching others bang on instruments, pretending to play, while she counted every beat in her head. She wasn't trying to show off, she wasn't trying to impress anyone, she just wanted to feel the drums like they were a part of her. And they were. The problem was no one was paying attention. Young black musicians, especially girls, rarely get the recognition they deserve, especially at her age. Many teachers unintentionally overlook them, assuming discipline and routine are more important than expression and feeling. That was especially true at Eastwood Elementary, where music was just another subject, another line on the report card. Aaliyah often raised her hand, asking to play the drums, but the teacher, Mr. Thompson, a middle-aged man with 30 years of routine, didn't take her seriously. He'd let the louder boys play the drums, those who banged without rhythm, but with volume, and he'd smile, saying, "That's energy," while Aaliyah sat with her fingers tapping quietly on the table, keeping time on her own invisible set of drums. Her mother knew she had something special, but she didn't have the time or money to invest in lessons. She bought Aaliyah a pair of used drumsticks from a thrift store once. No drums, just sticks. And Aaliyah would tap them on old phone books, pots and pans, the floorboards of their apartment. Wherever sound would bounce back, she'd watch YouTube videos late at night, after homework, after chores sometimes, until her mom came back from work and told her to get some sleep. "Your brain needs rest, baby, not just rhythm," her mom would whisper, kissing her forehead. But Aaliyah's brain was made of rhythm. It lived in her fingers, her elbows, her knees, her shoulders. It wasn't noise, it was language. It wasn't chaos, it was control. And it burned inside her with every second that passed without playing on a real set of drums. Her biggest challenge wasn't even access to instruments. It was being seen, being heard. A 10-year-old black girl in an overcrowded public school, where funds were tight and expectations low, wasn't likely to be discovered unless she made herself unforgettable. And that's exactly what she was about to do. Mr. Thompson had announced a classroom performance day. Every student would have 60 seconds to show what they'd learned. The top performer would be chosen to lead a small school showcase. Aaliyah knew this was her moment. She asked again to perform with the drums, and again Mr. Thompson hesitated. "Are you sure you want to try the drums, Aaliyah? They're not as easy as you think," he said, handing her the sticks half-heartedly, as if expecting her to give up after 10 seconds. But she didn't say a word. She walked up to the beat-up school drum kit, knees wobbling, hands shaking, but her heart calm. She adjusted the seat without asking for help, set her feet on the pedals, and looked straight ahead like she'd done this 1,000 times, because in her mind she had for weeks. She'd practiced patterns on her bedroom floor for hours without any real feedback, only the echo of her own passion. This was her first chance to turn those invisible rhythms into something real. When she started to play, the entire room shifted. The chaos of a classroom instantly quieted. Every eye turned to her, not out of curiosity, but confusion. She didn't start with a simple pattern. Like most, she launched into a complex paradiddle groove, alternating strokes with such speed and precision that even Mr. Thompson dropped his clipboard. Her classmates froze, jaws slack, some even laughed at first, thinking it was a fluke, or maybe a joke, until they realized she wasn't missing a single beat. She transitioned seamlessly into syncopated rhythms layered with ghost notes and accents, her body swaying slightly, but her hands steady. Each strike had intention, each pause had purpose. Her footwork on the kick drum mirrored patterns used by jazz professionals, not 10-year-olds. What shocked Mr. Thompson the most wasn't just the technical ability, it was the soul behind it, it was how. She closed her eyes halfway through and let the rhythm take over, not performing, but living inside the sound. The 60 seconds stretched on, but no one interrupted. When she finally stopped, there was a silence more powerful than applause. Mr. Thompson stood still, mouth open, then said quietly, "Where did you learn to play like that?" Aaliyah shrugged. "I just practiced." The class erupted into cheers. Even those who'd never spoken to her before started clapping, hooting, even a few jumping from their seats. Mr. Thompson called the principal. The same day begged her to come hear Aaliyah play, and when she did she had the same reaction. Shock, wonder, respect. Aaliyah wasn't just good, she was phenomenal, a 10-year-old child prodigy, hiding in plain sight, and nobody knew, until she was finally given 60 seconds to show it. The principal immediately arranged for Aaliyah to get access to better instruments. She reached out to local music programs, found her a mentor drummer from the Detroit jazz scene, and helped set up a GoFundMe to raise money for Aaliyah's first professional drum kit. Within a week, the video of her classroom performance had been shared across social media, racking up thousands of views and reactions. Messages poured in from musicians, music teachers, and producers across the country, all stunned by her timing. Her control, her feel. She wasn't just keeping the beat, she was the beat. But Aaliyah never let it get to her head. She still practiced every day, still helped her mom with laundry, still tapped rhythms on the dinner table when no one was looking. But now she had support, real support. Mr. Thompson changed too. He apologized for not taking her seriously earlier, and even offered to help her prepare for upcoming competitions. He called her one of the most gifted students I've ever taught, and meant every word, because sometimes teachers are just waiting to be awakened by the very kids they underestimated. Aaliyah's story isn't just about drums, it's about recognition. It's about breaking stereotypes. It's about how many gifted children, especially black girls, are dismissed or ignored simply because they don't fit the expected mold. It's about how talent doesn't always shout. It sometimes whispers until someone finally listens. And when they do, they hear the thunder. This is why it matters. This is why stories like Aaliyah's need to be told. If you've ever doubted the potential hiding in a quiet child, look again. If you've ever wondered if greatness can come from a second-hand pair of drumsticks and a dream, it can. Aaliyah proved that she didn't need a stage to be a star. She built her own from rhythm, sweat, and belief. And that teacher? He'll never forget the moment she played that first beat, because it changed everything for her and for him. So now it's your turn. What was your favorite part of Aaliyah's story? Have you ever seen a child prodigy in action? Let us know in the comments, and if you believe in lifting up hidden talents, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started with stories that inspire, remind, and shake the world awake. The news of Aaliyah's talent didn't just stay within the school, or even the city of Detroit. It began to ripple outward like the sound waves from a drumhead. The school district superintendent heard about it next, curious how a public school student with no formal training could be creating such buzz on social media, and through community word of mouth, she visited Eastwood Elementary, unannounced, the following Friday, hoping to see the phenomenon for herself. When she walked into the music room, Aaliyah was already at the drum kit, practicing, eyes closed, fingers light but firm on the sticks. When she finished, the superintendent clapped softly and asked if she could film a few clips to send to someone she knew in the arts department at Michigan State University. The word scholarship was mentioned, not as a promise but a vision. Aaliyah didn't even know what that meant yet, but it didn't stop there. A week later, a local news station picked up her story, running a segment titled, "Drumming Her Way into Hearts." The 10-year-old Detroit prodigy making noise across Michigan. In that 3-minute clip, viewers saw the grainy video of her school performance side by side with footage of her in her apartment tapping complex rhythms on pots and pans. Then they cut to her mother, who said through tears, "I always knew she was special, but I never imagined the world would see it too." That single clip changed everything. Donors poured in from all over the country. Aaliyah received offers to attend youth music academies, drum camps, jazz workshops, and even participate in a televised children's talent show, but she stayed grounded each time. She was asked about how it felt to suddenly be in the spotlight. She'd answer with some version of, "I just love playing the drums." She didn't care about fame or followers, she cared about rhythm, that rhythm was more than sound. It was survival, because long before the world applauded her, Aaliyah was using her drumming to drown out the noise of life. The arguments in the hallway, the hunger that sometimes whispered at night when the pantry was bare, the loneliness when her mom was working double shifts. Those sticks were her voice, and each beat was a word she couldn't say out loud anymore. Aaliyah's story lit a fire in the hearts of many, not because she was just talented, but because her story revealed what happens when we truly listen to the kids. Society tries to mute her story, found its way to jazz legend Kendrick Willis, who was retired from touring but still ran a private studio in Atlanta. He'd seen the viral clip and reached out to the school directly, asking to speak with Aaliyah on a video call. They set up a Zoom in the school library, and when Kendrick appeared on the screen in his signature fedora and smile, Aaliyah's eyes widened. "You're the guy from the Blue Note videos," she whispered. Kendrick laughed. "That's me, but you're the one making new notes now, young lady." He offered to mentor her personally, providing virtual lessons every week and eventually flying her out to his studio during the summer. She accepted shyly, but with excitement. For the first time, someone outside of her family and school truly believed not just in her talent, but in her future. Kendrick didn't just teach her technique. He taught her history. He taught her about the greats, Max Roach, Art Blakey, Sheila E., and reminded her that her rhythm was part of a much longer line of black excellence. Aaliyah soaked up every lesson like sunlight. With each passing month, her skill deepened, but so did her understanding of what it meant to hold a drumstick in her hand. It wasn't just music, it was resistance, it was freedom. But even as doors opened, challenges remained. Fame brought attention, but not always the good kind. Some students at her school grew jealous, whispering behind her back, calling her a teacher's pet, or saying she was lucky, not talented. One even tried to sabotage her drumsticks before a performance, loosening the tips so they'd break mid-play, but Aaliyah noticed before stepping on stage, and simply borrowed a backup pair from Mr. Thompson, who now watched over her like a guardian. The sabotage attempt hurt, but it didn't break her. If anything, it made her hit harder. Figuratively and literally, she poured her frustration into her solos, letting her pain and pride bleed through the rhythm, until even her enemies stood in awe. That same week, Aaliyah was invited to perform at the Detroit Youth Jazz Festival as the youngest solo percussionist in the event's history. The crowd was massive, the stage huge, and the lights blinding, but when she sat at the kit, it all disappeared. She opened with a tribute groove to her mentor Kendrick, then launched into a 7-minute solo blending jazz, gospel, funk, and her own Detroit flavor. The crowd roared mid-performance, clapping along, not because they were told to, but because they couldn't help themselves. Kendrick watched from the wings, nodding proudly, and after the show he pulled her aside. "You don't just play the drums, Aaliyah, you speak them," he said. She smiled her trademark quiet smile and replied, "That's because they always listened to me when no one else did." That quote alone was printed in local newspapers and turned into a viral post online, reminding people that sometimes the most powerful voices don't use words at all. Aaliyah was now on the radar of institutions across the country. Offers from music academies poured in, but she and her mom were careful about what they said yes to. They didn't want to sell her talent for short-term fame. They wanted longevity, integrity. Mr. Thompson worked with them to find a balance between school and opportunity, making sure her academics stayed strong while she continued to grow musically. Aaliyah even began teaching other students during recess and lunch breaks, helping them with rhythm and technique. Her classmates started to admire her again, this time not for her fame, but for her generosity. She never looked down on them, never made anyone feel small, even though her talent towered above most. And that's what made her truly special. Aaliyah's next big break came when a national children's television network invited her to perform in a segment on youth innovators. She flew to New York with her mom, and for the first time saw the skyline she'd only seen in movies. The studio was intimidating, full of bright lights, buzzing staff, and high-tech cameras, but she handled it like she handled everything. With grace and rhythm, she performed a 3-minute original piece, inspired by the sounds of her city, incorporating the rumble of buses, the rhythm of footsteps, the distant echoes of sirens and laughter. It was Detroit through drums, and it moved the audience to their feet. The host of the show was so impressed he told viewers, "This young lady isn't just a drummer, she's a storyteller with sticks." That phrase became the headline the next day, and soon after an entire brand began to build around her identity. Aaliyah Johnson, the storyteller with sticks merchandise offers appeared. Record label scouts began circling, but her mom kept her grounded. "You're a kid first, Aaliyah, you've got time to be a star." Aaliyah agreed, though she kept pushing herself to grow. She began composing her own full drum compositions, even dabbling in digital production, using free software on her school laptop. Mr. Thompson bought her a MIDI controller with his own money after she scored perfect grades in music class, and Aaliyah hugged him so hard he nearly cried. "You've got more than talent, kid, you've got heart," he told her, and she did, because even as the world started to recognize her, she never forgot where she came from. She still tapped out rhythms on the same old floorboards where she'd first found her beat, still said thank you to every custodian who cleaned the music room, still remembered the time she almost wasn't allowed to play that moment. Haunted her not because it hurt, but because it was almost the end of the road before it even began. If she hadn't been given 60 seconds, she might have gone unnoticed for years, and that's the tragedy that lives behind so many gifted children who never get their shot. That's what fueled her now, not just the rhythm, but the mission to make sure no other kid like her got left behind. So she started speaking out, not just playing in interviews. She began talking about funding for arts programs, inequality in public schools, and how talent shouldn't have to wait for permission. She partnered with nonprofits to help donate instruments to schools like hers, and created a small online series teaching basic drumming techniques to kids with no access to lessons. Each episode ended with the same message: you don't need fancy drums to be a drummer, you just need a heartbeat. And hers never missed. Aaliyah's teacher, Mr. Thompson, became an advocate too, giving speeches at education conferences and testifying about how arts programs aren't just nice, they're necessary. He told Aaliyah's story over and over, hoping it would inspire change. It did. Several schools in the district began reinvesting in their music departments, citing her as proof of what's possible when children are given tools and belief. By the time Aaliyah turned 11, she had already headlined 3 youth festivals, recorded a collaborative jazz track with Kendrick Willis, and been nominated for a National Youth Arts Award. But her biggest accomplishment was still being that same girl who practiced with secondhand sticks on kitchen pots, because the fame didn't change her. It just amplified what was already there. Now people listen when she plays, but more importantly, they watch when she stops, and in those silences, they see a child who refused to be invisible, who turned rhythm into revolution, and who reminded the world that sometimes greatness comes not from privilege or polish, but from the raw, unstoppable beat of a young heart refusing to stay quiet. The year Aaliyah turned 12, something happened that no one expected, not even her teacher, Mr. Thompson, or her mother, or Kendrick Willis, or any of the growing number of fans and supporters she had gathered by then. Aaliyah was invited to perform at the White House during an event celebrating youth achievement in the arts. She had been nominated by the Detroit Arts Coalition and chosen from hundreds of applicants around the country. The letter of invitation arrived in a gold-rimmed envelope with the presidential seal, and Aaliyah held it in her trembling hands, barely able to read the words through the tears in her eyes. Her mom screamed with joy and hugged her so tight she almost dropped the envelope. Mr. Thompson had to sit down when he heard the news, overwhelmed with pride and disbelief that one of his students, a girl from a neighborhood people always talked down about, was about to represent not just her city but her entire generation on a national stage. The preparation was intense. Aaliyah practiced every day after school, often into the night, and Kendrick flew up to Detroit twice to work with her personally, tightening her transitions, polishing her timing, but never once trying to change her core sound, because he said that was what made her unforgettable: the sound of truth, rhythm rooted in experience, born not in studios but in struggle. When the day finally came, Aaliyah flew to Washington, D.C. with her mother, Mr. Thompson, and Kendrick joining them as guests. She wore a tailored blazer with a pin in the shape of a snare drum, and walked into the East Room with her head high. Cameras flashed, officials whispered, people stared, but she focused on the moment, the heartbeat in her ears steady and strong. She took her seat on stage behind a custom set of gold and black drums donated for the performance, and waited for the MC to call her name. When it happened, when she stood and walked to center stage, the room hushed completely. Then she began, and it wasn't just a performance, it was a message. Every beat a memory, every rhythm a piece of history. She mixed traditional marching cadences with African polyrhythms, added gospel flourishes, and jazz improvisation. She tapped into ancestral rhythms and futuristic beats seamlessly, and by the end, the audience was on its feet, not just clapping but shouting, overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. The First Lady hugged her and whispered something in her ear that made Aaliyah nod slowly. Her mother wept in the front row. Mr. Thompson wiped his glasses. Kendrick looked away for a second, overcome with emotion. That moment went viral again. News outlets covered the performance with headlines like "Little Drummer Girl Moves Nation" and "Rhythm of a Generation." And for the first time Aaliyah's face appeared on the cover of a national magazine. The title simply said, "Listen," in bold letters over a close-up shot of her poised with sticks in hand, a symbol not just of musical talent but of possibility and transformation. And the world did listen, not just to the sound of her drums, but to the silence her story filled in the spaces of what we thought we knew about brilliance, about potential, about where greatness could come from. Because Aaliyah's story was never just about talent, it was about being heard, about getting that one chance, that one 60-second window that changed the course of a life. And it reminded teachers, parents, and leaders everywhere what could happen when we paid attention, when we looked beyond grades or behavior reports or economic status, and really saw the children standing right in front of us. Aaliyah didn't stop there. She returned to Detroit and launched her own youth percussion program called Beat the Odds, where she and volunteers offered free lessons to underprivileged kids at community centers and shelters. She gave away donated drum kits and sticks and created a mobile app for kids to learn rhythm through simple games, all branded with her name, not for profit, but for purpose. She was building a legacy not of fame but of access, because she knew the feeling of being invisible, and vowed no other kid in her city would feel that way if she could help it. She continued to study music formally, eventually attending a conservatory, where she became the youngest ever to join the advanced jazz ensemble at age 13. Her compositions were performed at music festivals across the country, and she was invited to collaborate with global artists from Africa to Brazil to Japan, all drawn to her unique blend of heart, heritage and hustle. But no matter where she went, she always came home, always made time to teach, to speak, to inspire the next generation of rhythm makers. She recorded an album titled Heartbeat on Concrete, which became a surprise bestseller with tracks named after each stage of her journey, from Floorboard Symphony to Teacher's Eyes and 60 Seconds, every piece a reminder of where she began and why it mattered. Her teacher, Mr. Thompson, eventually retired, but not before the school named the music room after him, and Aaliyah spoke at the dedication, telling the crowd that there would be no rhythm without him. He cried again, and so did half the staff in attendance. Her mother quit her second job and started working full-time managing Aaliyah's growing foundation. And even Kendrick admitted he had never seen anything quite like her, not just the skill but the soul of a generation carried in the steady beating of her hands. When asked in an interview what her proudest moment was, Aaliyah didn't say the White House or the TV shows or the magazine covers. She said it was when a little girl from her program told her, "I didn't think I was good at anything until I hit that drum." Because that was the legacy Aaliyah was building, not just for herself, but for every child who had ever been overlooked, forgotten, underfunded, or underestimated. She was proof that a heartbeat could turn into a revolution, that silence could be broken by rhythm, that one teacher's belief could unlock a lifetime of purpose, and that no matter how loud the world gets, there's always room to listen just a little closer. As the story of Aaliyah Johnson continued to unfold, it became clear that she was no longer just the girl with the sticks. She was the voice for kids like her, and a reminder that behind every desk in every under-resourced classroom in every city across America there might be another genius just waiting for someone to ask, "What can you do?" Her teacher once said she changed the beat of his life, and now she was doing the same for thousands more, one rhythm, one story, one heart at a time.